Hey everybody, welcome back to the warbossfitz channel. Today we are doing the second episode of Grimdark Future Lore. And once again, I will open by saying this is not a lore channel. This is just me yelling into the void. And today our sponsors are these guys.
Fleet Admirals, Generals, your reinforcements have arrived. At PrintedStarships.com, you will find high-quality 3D printed starships and sci-fi armies ready for deployment. Whether you're commanding fleets in Star Wars or Armada, dogfighting in X-Wing, battling in one-page rules war fleets, or leading ground forces in Grimdark Future, we've got the precision-crafted models you need to seize victory. Use code warbossfitz for 15% off your order. That's PrintedStarships.com, prepared to take command of the tabletop.
So today, we are going to be talking about the Radiance Cascade, the event that took place in the Sirius galaxy that pulled all the humans out of their galaxy and dumped them into this one. This is going to be caused by the dwarves. The dwarves are the ones that screwed everything up. And I ran a poll on my Discord. How should I tell this story? Because it involves the dwarves and it involves the orcs and it involves elves and stuff, but mostly dwarves. And overwhelmingly, they said I should talk about this one like I'm one of the orcs. So yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Everything that I am telling you today can be found on the one-page rules website under the lore section. And once again, I'm not just going to read directly out of here. I'm going to be expanding it a little bit and giving you guys a little bit more info, making stuff up that's not 100% in the story. So let's go ahead and tuck into it. The creatures who would eventually become the dwarves originated in the center of the Sirius sector on an inhospitable rock that was irradiated by their sun. The way they were able to survive was digging holes in the ground and living off of the cave mushrooms and the lichen and all of the nastier bits that grew in the dark. Over a long time, this created the hardy species that we know of as the dwarves. Their world was very rich in minerals and ores, and some even say the dwarves were able to evolve to eat the actual minerals themselves. As these creatures became civilized, they were able to group together in large underground caverns, creating the first dwarven holds. But the whole species seemed predisposed to greed. Unsatisfied with what they had, they continued to dig deeper and deeper, heaping up piles of more ores to feed their civilization. Small groups of miners were no longer able to keep up with the quotas that they have set for themselves, so they banded together, forming the Dwarven mining guilds. The mining guilds staked claim to whole sections of the planet, and soon these guild lords became the most powerful and richest dwarfs on the planet. They held absolute control over the ore that their society itself depended on. These guild lords demanded constant profits out of their guild members because they were in competition with the other guild lords on the planet, mining deeper and deeper into the crust of their home world. This competition continued until their home world was mined completely bare. Then and only then did budgets allow the Dwarven guilds to look towards the stars. The Dwarf guilds were fortunate because there were not many races in their area of the Sirius system, and they were able to expand ever outwards, growing larger and larger, and mining more and more from every system around them. The expansion only stopped because they ran into the Elven Empire. After some initial hostilities, as the dwarves still tried to expand and take some elven planets from them, the elves were able to find a diplomatic solution because, unknowingly to the dwarves, the elves had been having trouble with the orc population on that side of the system. And the compromise from the elves was to allow the dwarves to continue mining the planets on the border that faced the orcs. So as we come to this part, we must talk about the Orc Marauders, again, from the OPR lore section of their website. Let's talk about the glorious, wonderful, never their fault orcs. The orcs came from a world that was barren and harsh, where survival was a constant struggle. On their planet, the orcs adapted to lives of hardship, fighting each other and fighting the elements. In order to survive, these orcs banded together in clans. For the orcs, honor, strength, and their clans were the most important parts of their lives. Life outside the clan was harsh, but life inside the clan was easier. They would come together and share their meager resources, share the load of work, somehow find a way to survive. Orc clans would fight each other for the resources that they had collected. As these small clan wars moved forward, over time these clans would be led by worthy orcs, growing larger and larger until eventually that orc was laid low by either time or a rival clan. And then at that point, the larger clan would fracture and break into smaller clans, orcs that had a closer personal trust with each other, and the cycle would continue. Despite this lack of unity, the orcs did have technological innovations, and over time, eventually, made it to space themselves. Once they started expanding, they found whole worlds where their clans would thrive. The orcs, being isolated in their section of the galaxy, were able to spread out much further and much faster than the other races of the Sirius sector. That is until they met the elves on the other side. By the time the orcs met the elves had a huge territory, so they saw no need to press into the elven lands. They were just able to expand other directions. But this did not stop orc clan warfare from occasionally spilling into elf territory. Kind of a collateral damage sort of thing. The elves, being the hippie peaceniks they were, they didn't like doing this. They didn't like it when this happened. So the elves were able to kind of bribe or make deals with the other orc clans to make sure they were fighting against themselves. Which the orcs, of course, they took it because we were going to fight them anyways. We might as well make a few bucks before we do it to start with, right? This continued on for quite a long time. That is until the dwarves showed up to screw up this whole system. Once the elves gave the dwarves the territory on the border of the orc systems, the dwarves did not sit back and just watch the orcs fight amongst themselves. The dwarves started pushing forward to take the resources of the planets that the orcs were on. In retaliation for the orc raids that would occasionally spill over into now dwarven space, the dwarves would come back and conquer entire star systems from the orcs. And while the dwarves did enjoy some material benefits to this, they screwed up by doing one thing. They gave all the orcs something to fight. So under the leadership of one boss whose name has been lost to history, the entire orc species banded together and dove headfirst into dwarven territory. The sheer size of the orc fleet that poured across the border was insanity. Hundreds of thousands of ships, from escort size all the way to super dreadnoughts. The dwarf guilds were not prepared for this, and they started losing and losing badly. Being that these were two galaxy-wide empires that were fighting each other, this war took generations. Orcs and dwarves fought and died, knowing nothing but war against each other. The dwarves using every scrap of material they had, fighting the savagery of the United Orc Empire. As the desperation of the dwarves reached its highest point, they realized that they needed more materials than what was left of their empire was going to be able to give them. So, one of their scientific teams came up with a great idea of using a wormhole generator to gain materials and strip planets, and being able to drop all of those materials into the Dwarven shipyards to continue the fight with the orcs. When the Dwarves activated this machine, something went horribly wrong. They delved too deep and too greedily. The machine tore across the universe, opening wormholes in not only the Milky Way galaxy, but all of the galaxies surrounding it. This caused a massive ripple effect, which tore a hole in the middle of the Sirius sector. They opened so many wormholes at once, the Cascade failure was amazing. Some dwarves suspect that it was the guild leaders themselves that rushed the project to get themselves more resources to aid them in the war that they started with the orcs. What this had actually accomplished is destroying what was left of the Dwarven Empire as it went poof into dust. The orcs did not get out of this unscathed at all. No. It ripped half of their empire apart as well. This had complete sector-wide destruction. The dwarves screwed up everything. The orc clans found themselves leaderless, as most of the leaders and most of the largest clans that had joined this great crusade against the dwarves were evaporated in an instant. The only orc clans that were able to survive the Radiance Cascade, as it came to be known, were the orcs that were on the periphery of the far side of their empire. The planets inside their empire that were not completely destroyed, but had life erased from them, were soon settled by lots of these human arrivals that just showed up and found empty worlds. And as for the dwarfs, the only survivors of the Dwarf Empire were mining fleets that were on the periphery of their empire out in deep space. After the Cascade happened, they moved quickly to go back in system and evacuate whatever dwarves survived, and they have converted over to a completely space-borne life. Now the dwarves all live in mobile mining fleets, ruled over by the different guilds. These guilds replaced any government that the dwarves had. Now they are focused entirely on profit, resource extraction, and industrial production. They funnel much of their production into ship production and tools to allow them to mine with even greater efficiency. Instead of having settled worlds, what the dwarves have now they call veins, or strings of planets that they are slowly moving through, leaving nothing but the emptied, hollowed out remains of rock to show you which direction they have gone. Most of the rest of the Sirius sector despise the dwarves for what they caused during the Radiance Cascade. But the dwarves are able to trade away some of the ore and minerals and resources they get by mining out these planets in order to continue the cycle in the Sirius sector. As for the orcs, they were decimated and scattered by the Cascade event. But what remains of the orcs are proud, knowing that they started their evolution in harsh conditions. They're currently living in harsh conditions. And one day they do hope to reunite all the clans again, and they can once again regain their former glory. So that's it, everybody. That is the Radiance Cascade, or how the dwarves made everyone's life even worse. So that's it, everybody. That is the Radiance Cascade, or how the dwarves screwed everything up. If you guys enjoyed that, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be going over some of the other OPR lore, and again, most of this can be found just on their website. I'm kind of zhushing it up a little bit for you too. So next time we come back to lore, I'm going to be talking about the elves and how they don't like manual labor and how they hate the pores. So stay tuned for that. Remember to check out PrintedStarships.com. The code warbossfitz gets you 15% off there. And I hope you guys are having fun playing OPR wherever you are. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.